Welcome on in. This is Lowcountry Money Talk. I'm Jessa Jeremiah, and we have for you today, back in studio, Phil Bloyd. He's with Revolutionary Financial Group, and it is so nice to see you, Phil.
It's good to be here again.
Got a lot to talk about.
Sure.
We always do, and I always learn a lot. Our viewers do too, because you have a wealth of knowledge here for us.
I've been around a while.
You know what to do. And that's good, because a lot of things are changing, everything's always in flux, and we need to know what to do with our money. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Roth conversions the right way.
Right.
So let's talk about that. Okay, we've got increasing tax concerns, right? So people wondering, and this might be you at home too, viewers, as you're watching, is it time to convert retirement savings to a tax-free Roth IRA? And what kind of guidance would you give people if so?
So let's first talk about what it is and how it works. The term Roth comes from a senator, Roth. I think it was Delaware years ago. He passed away, but they came up with a provision on how we could have IRAs and we could pay the taxes on them now, as far as a traditional IRA where we're kind of deferring the tax. But if we do a Roth and we say, okay, we're not going to take the deduction off of our income tax return this year, but all the growth of that, if we follow the IRS guidelines, could be income tax free. Right. So over the years and the compounding interest and the stock market gains, that could be a huge number. And so what we talk about, the thing where it makes sense or not, when I'm in front of a group of people, I ask, how many of you think income taxes may go up in the future or may be higher than what they are today? And what do you think they do?
I would guess they would say yes.
Yes, most of them say yes. And then I'm like, okay, so most of you have a lot of money that hasn't been taxed yet, because it's been deferred in this IRA or 401k or whatever it may be. So we're going to be dependent that the IRS is going to be benevolent with us and not raise those income taxes. So we have this money trapped and we don't know at what rate it's going to be taxed in the future.
Right.
But what we do know is we do know what the income tax rates are today. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, why wouldn't we today decide how much it would make sense to convert over to a Roth from a traditional? Go ahead and pay the taxes off now, while we know we're in a relatively low income tax environment today. Mm-hmm. So I think it may make sense. You want to talk to your accountant, and you may be your own accountant if you do your own QuickBooks or whatever. So you may run some samples and say, hey, if I convert $50,000 from a traditional IRA this year, how does that affect my income tax? And to me, I think it makes sense. As you said, I think income taxes are going to be higher in the future.
Right.
Why do we think income tax? Well, because we've got a $30 trillion debt, huh? So, I have a unique way of doing it. I like to do the equities portion first, because I think we have the highest opportunity for growth in equities over time. So if you have a stock portfolio or something like this and you have an IRA, maybe we should have a Roth IRA and convert some of these stocks, not sell the stocks, but maybe convert them over at current value.
Okay. Well, and that makes sense, as you're thinking about over time, obviously, like you're saying, the taxes going up is very likely. So why not make the move while you know what you're working with at a time where it's likely lower?
Sure.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about, does it matter? Another question for you, I'm sure our viewers are wondering too, where money comes from when we're talking about paying conversion tax.
Right.
Do we need to know where it's coming from? Is it a big difference from one to the other?
Yes, and we talk about, it makes sense we have different buckets of distribution. What I think we'll do on that one, because it's going to take a few minutes to kind of knock that out, we're getting to the end of the segment. So I think we'll start the next segment and say, when we owe these taxes for the Roth conversion, where can we get them and how does it make sense? Or does it make sense?
Or does it make sense? Okay, bigger question than I thought. We'll tackle that one after the break. We'll be right back on Lowcountry Money Talk. Stick with us. thanks for coming back with us here on Lowcountry Money Talk. If you're just tuning in, this is Bloyd joining us with Revolutionary Financial Group. Nice to see you back.
I made it back for the next segment.
It's good because I already asked you a question and we need answers, Phil.
I tried to get out of it.
You did, yeah. We went to break. It's okay. I teed you up with a big one, and we're going to spend some time unpacking it now after the break. But we're talking today about Roth conversions and really doing it the right way. So a lot of scenarios really to run through, but let's talk a little bit about conversion tax and how do we determine, really does it matter where the money is coming from to pay that?
All right, Jessa. So we talk about buckets of money in investing. So, maybe I have a bucket that I'm paying capital gains on. Maybe I have a bucket that I keep in the bank and I've already paid taxes on. Or maybe I have deferred money itself. So there's a few different choices you may have. The best choice, in my opinion, would be if we have money that we've already paid taxes on that is sitting in our bank and it's getting eaten up because of inflation. Maybe we could use these funds to pay the taxes. The IRS really doesn't care where the money comes from.
They just want their money.
They just want their money. So that would probably be the best scenario.
Okay.
Some people say, well, I'm just going to have the taxes withdrawn from the item itself. So if I wanted to do a $100,000 conversion, let's say, and 25% was taxes going out, then I would only end up with the $75,000.
Right.
Generally, I don't like that option as much. The other option is, the rules for the Roth. If I'm over 59 and a half, I can actually take out the amount that I converted, anytime I want, because I already paid taxes on that.
Right.
So I may do the conversion, and when it's the last part of the year, I might take those funds to pay the taxes out of the Roth itself. That probably would make sense more, after I have done it for several years and I have growth in the items that I converted over. I prefer to do the stock, though, because we do not have to sell the stock to convert to the Roth. We get the day before's pricing. So if I have a stock that has been beaten half to death, which isn't hard these days if you keep up with the market. So let's say I have one that's really down low and it's been battered, and I say, okay, well, hey, today it's up 5 or 6% or whatever it may be. Well, check with your custodian. It's important because it's time sensitive. But the way that we do it at the custodian I use is if I can get that conversion in before 2:30, I get the day before stock pricing.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
So that stock would already be on the uptick before I convert it, and I'll pay taxes on the day before its number. I think that makes a lot more sense.
Okay. Well, and there's a lot of options to work through, so you got to figure out what makes the most sense for the individual.
Check around.
Nice to know that there are options. Now, speaking of options, is there ever an occasion where it simply just doesn't make sense for somebody to even make that conversion?
Sure. You'd have people that have low taxable income. They have low distributions from their IRA. The required distributions are low, or they're giving a lot to charity, and it may not make sense. But then I also like to say, well, at the demise of, let's say, a couple, the husband and the wife, and then where's the IRA going to go? And let's say they have children. Well, we need to look into that, because still it may make sense to go ahead and have those taxes paid and have that converted over to a Roth IRA before it goes to the children, because then they'll get it tax-free. So if they receive a traditional IRA, they have 10 years to get all the funds out.
Okay.
So, they're going to be, if they're working, they're going to be taking distributions over those 10 years more than likely. They don't have to, but it has to all be out within 10 years. And it could put them in a much higher tax bracket than Uncle Sam ends up getting even more.
Right.
So there's a lot of things to consider.
There are a lot of things to consider, and that's why it's helpful to really, get a professional who can walk you through some of these things. And for our viewers who are watching who want a little bit more information about that, want to know a little bit more about some of the topics we're talking about, you have some ways to do that.
Sure, just get a hold of us on our website, reach out to us. Usually the conversions make sense if we have over $500,000 in IRAs or 401ks or something of that nature.
Absolutely. Well, good to know. Hey, we've got more Lowcountry Money Talk
All
after
right.
the break.
Good.
You're going to stick around because I
Sure.
have more questions.
I'll be here.
We hope you stick around too. We'll be right back.
All right.
Hey, welcome back in. We are still here with lots of great financial information for you. This is Lowcountry Money Talk. I'm Jessa Jeremiah, returning with Phil Bloyd with Revolutionary Financial Group. And we've been sitting here at the desk. We've been talking a lot, learning a lot. Phil, it's time to switch it up a little bit. What do you think?
Let's switch it up. I like it.
We're going to talk a little bit about bonds, bond dangers. You know, we're really in an environment right now where interest rates are rising. We've got higher interest rates, and that makes people a little nervous when
Yeah.
they're in bonds,
Sure.
considering, maybe investing. So what do we need to really be concerned
Sure.
about with this higher interest rate?
Well, if I'm in a fixed bond and I'm in there for a number of years, and I may need access to those funds, well, it's a supply and demand thing, right? So if I'm in a bond that's paying me 3% yield, and the new ones are coming out like 4%, the interest for mine at 3% is not going to be great. But let's say I need more than just the interest, so I need to get some principal of that bond. So I'm going to have to sell it. And to sell something, you have to have buyers. A lot of real estate people in this area.
Well, yeah, we know that, right? Supply and demand,
Right.
we need buyers.
So,
Okay.
there needs to be buyers and there needs to be a market. So if there's not much of a market for my bond at 3% because the new ones are paying 4%, by the way, if you were going shopping for a bond and they were issuing at 4%, would you buy mine for 3%, please?
That's a tough sell, Phil.
We're friends, though.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe,
So-
but that 4% looks better.
Right. So we're going to have to sweeten the pot, okay? So there's a term we call in the industry called a haircut.
Okay.
Haircuts are good when you need one, and I'm on the borderline there. But it means loss. And do you know why we call it a haircut?
Not really, but I have a feeling it's a better sounding term
Than a loss.
than a loss. Yeah.
So we sell at a haircut. That means you have to sell at a discount to get someone interested in buying your bond.
Yeah.
And that's not a good feeling. So in a higher interest rate environment, that's going to be an issue with the bonds. I think the other issue that we have, Jessa, with bonds is that we have the Federal Reserve. They went out and not only invested in treasury bonds, they also invested in corporate bonds. So they have a lot of bonds to sell.
Okay.
And man, I'm a little worried about competing with them.
Sure.
So a little uncertain there for me as far as how that all ends up.
Right.
But, we need to look at some alternatives to that.
Okay.
So,
And that makes sense for somebody who's, in a bond and thinking about or concerned about needing to sell. What about for those who are looking at getting into bonds? Does that mean it's a good time?
possibly, because they'll be issuing at higher rates. Everybody likes to get more interest, I guess. We don't like to pay more interest, but we like to be on the receiving end.
Right.
There's other alternatives to bonds that we could consider. Banks have some issues, insurance companies have some issues. So I really say you should check around just to make sure, do I really understand bonds and this and that, and do I want to be in that, and what's the time horizon on me needing these funds?
Right, and that's very individual, of course, as well. So depending on when you're going to need the funds, and it might be an unknown.
Sure.
There's always unexpected events.
Yeah.
We're going to save a little time on this back end for some current events and some other
Sure.
things going on.
Awesome.
So you'll stay around. I've got more questions as per usual, and I know
Glad.
our viewers do too.
Sure. All right.
All right, we'll be back. More Lowcountry Money Talk after this break. You've been watching Lowcountry Money Talk. You've made it to our final segment, and guess what? We've been talking money.
Yeah.
And you know what? We've had a
Interest.
lot to talk about. Yes. We've talked so far about Roth conversions, so make sure you go back and revisit that. This is all on our website as well as on your website, Revolutionary Financial Group. So if you missed that, we're also talking a little bit about bonds today in relation to rising interest rates. So some great information there. We're going to talk a little bit about some current events to round us out here today.
A lot of current events.
So this is interesting. The jobs report. Let's discuss that. I want to talk about this particularly because I find that the information is counterintuitive.
Yes.
So
I
walk
like
us
that
through
word.
it. Yes, it is.
Sure. So crazy stuff about the job reports this week. So we were told by the White House early in the week, I think it was Monday, hey, don't expect much. This is going to be a terrible week for jobs. And, you know, the Omicron and all that's going to be in this job report. So we're probably going to be down. Well, you know, then you had the Wall Street types and all the economists said, well, we can expect about 150,000. So everybody is figuring, oh, this is going to be a bad thing. And then the report came out at 467,000.
Okay.
Way over the 150.
Way over.
And yet then the market responded negatively to that.
And that's the part that is so mind-boggling to me. Okay, so walk us through how that happened.
So we would think, hey, this is good news. People are getting back to work. The labor participation went up, and there the unemployment went up. And it's like, well, why did it go up? Well, because there's now more people considered to be looking for a job. So we went from 3.9 to 4% or so, but there's 62% now in the labor participation. But the market did not like it. And the reason the market didn't like it is because the market is worried about interest rate increases. And many people say, well, the Fed's going to raise it 4 times, 5 times, whatever it may be. And that usually leads to a slower of the economy, less homes being purchased, higher interest, mortgage rates, companies have to refinance their debt. So it usually slows the economy. So that's why the market acted negatively to those big job numbers. You know?
Right.
So
interesting, a little bit of an economic slowdown as a result of something that you would think would really be positive for the market.
the stock market loves low interest rates, zero if possible. So any fear of those moving up or moving up too quickly, you know, the market's going to pull back on that.
Right, absolutely.
That's kind of
Well, it does make sense when you talk us through
Sure.
the whys behind it. Let's talk a little bit for our viewers who, you know, the volatile market is, you know, causing us to have some concerns, and because we're just really not sure what to expect day to day, even within 1 week, we could be up, then we could be down. So how do we really take a look at our own portfolios, know how much risk we have, and whether or not we're in the right risk category?
Jessa, I think that's the biggest issue for especially retirees and their health.
Yeah.
Because if you're worried, you ever heard the saying, you know, it's not what you eat, it's what's eating you.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you're glued to this stock market, to this TV every day, and you see these huge swings, I mean, first of all, you need to make sure that you're taking the appropriate amount of risk and not too much risk.
Right.
So if you're getting sick at your stomach and all this, maybe
Too much risk.
too much risk. So we've invested at Revolutionary Financial Group, the team, all of us, we've invested in a risk assessment software. And basically this is answers that you give to questions, and a report is generated, and it says, hey, you know, here's your, based upon what you said and how you feel, your risk number is 30. And then if I look at the way you're invested, you're, you know, maybe you're at 70 on the risk.
Yeah.
And this is going to create some health issues and some problems. So I would advise people, for all of our viewers, we'll do that assessment at no cost. It usually makes sense for those that have 500,000 investable. Now the other thing is that it will show you, based upon your current investments, this could be your reward in percentages, but on the downside, this is how much you could be negative on your
Sure.
portfolio.
Okay, and that's a good point too. So you don't want to be overly risky, but
Right.
at the same time, you want to be at the appropriate amount of risk for what your goals are and
With
where
this
you are.
volatile market, you really need to get this done, Also, we want to do a portfolio analysis and judge your performance to the overall market. We'll do that for our viewers at no cost as well. Contact us at Revolutionary Financial Group. Our email, Rachel's the one that typically takes care of that, so please get a hold of us. We'd be glad to do these assessments for you.
That's good. You know what? It's nice to stop and really take a look at the big picture, see what you're doing, and have a professional on your side that's doing that. And you have a lot of tools to help
Sure.
folks. So
Absolutely.
it's been a fun show.
Oh, I loved it.
Are we done already? Wow.
That's it.
All right, Phil. We'll see you next
All
time.
right.
We'll
Thanks.
see you next time on Lowcountry Money Talk.
See ya.